Salutations, respective viewers. I am George from Ireland. So this is just a very brief live one about the UK general election. So on Thursday, the United Kingdom is having its parliamentary election. Um, Elections in the United Kingdom are always on a Thursday for some reason. Not quite sure why. Since 1918, prior to that, they used to go on for several days, even a fortnight. Now it's obviously just one day. Someone told me that because there used to be a half day in shops on a Thursday. I don't know, that's why. So from, is it 8 in the morning to 7 at night or something? That's when the polls are open. So it's obviously far too late to register to vote. You should have sorted that out 2 weeks ago or more. And of course, anyone can register to get a postal vote these days. They changed that rule in 2001. Previously, you had to have a particularly good reason, like you've got to be away or you're disabled, whereby you couldn't vote in person. But anyway, it looks like the Conservative Party is heading for a substantial victory. The Poland polls shows that the Tories have 10 points ahead. So that's that. It's a racing certainty that the Conservatives are going to get the highest share of the vote, and very likely the Conservatives are going to get the most seats. Will they get the majority of seats? That's the question. Remember, there's 650 members of Parliament, so you'd need 326 to have a majority. But then again, the Speaker doesn't vote, so okay, a bit less than that. And bear in mind, Sinn Féin had 7 members of Parliament with a dissolution, and they don't turn up. So in reality, you don't need 326, you need fewer than that. Now, how many seats will Sinn Féin win this time? It looks like they'll lose Foyle. They'll probably hold all the others, actually. And they are abstentionists. They refuse to take an oath of allegiance to Her Britannic Majesty because they don't recognise that Northern Ireland is part of the UK. Well, then don't stand in the election. But there we are. So why are the Conservatives doing so well? Well, a number of reasons. Partly Brexit and partly Corbyn. Corbyn is the gift that keeps on giving from a Tory perspective, which is why for the first time ever, he's the poster boy of the Conservative campaign, the Labour leader. So keep on going, we don't want a Corbyn government. Now, the Conservatives would never say, we can't have Blair in charge or Brown in charge or even Ed Miliband in charge. None of them was seen as cataclysmic, despite their many mistakes. So Corbyn's much less popular in this party, drags the party down. So Labour really needs to be shot of him. The punditry, about Corbyn's leadership would it be disastrous, and so it's proved. So Corbyn was seen as really an apostle of the loony left in the 80s, and even the 1987 campaign when he was a little-known backbench MP. The Conservatives used quotations from Corbyn to show how dreadful Labour would be. So there hasn't been much tightening in the polls since the campaign begun, which is perhaps odd because usually there is a bit. And it looks like this is going to be the 4th Conservative victory on the trot. Obviously, 2010 was a narrow victory. The Conservatives were only able to govern with the Liberal Democrats as coalition partners. 2015, the Conservatives won a small but workable majority. 2015, as we know, the Conservatives lost that majority, were still the largest party, had to have this confidence and supply agreement with the DUP. And there's this one, but of the 3 previous elections, the Conservatives only won convincingly once. So that's that. I mean, Labour, when you've lost 4 times in a row, you need to have a serious rethink. What is going wrong? It shouldn't be like this. There's only been once in the 20th century where Labour's lost 4 elections consecutively. So the Conservative slogan, the main one, is get Brexit done, notably not talking about the economy so much, not talking about public services or the environment or things like that. Brexit's the centrepiece of the Conservative and Unionist campaign. So if this wasn't the case, Brexit could have been sorted out in March. The Conservatives have to talk about other issues. The NHS is shrieking, education is crumbling, crime is rising, the environment is obviously in danger. The cost of living is very high, and obviously salaries are not keeping pace with that. There are all sorts of problems the Conservatives have not dealt with very effectively. They have nursed the country back to economic health since 2010. So it's actually good fortune for the Conservatives that they can talk about Brexit. Now, all right, full disclosure, I'm supporting the Conservatives. I've been campaigning for them. I want them to win, but I'm an objective person, and I recognise their failings in the Conservative campaign. Boris Johnson is someone whom I have no regard for, although yes, he's highly entertaining. He's a shameless charlatan and a pathological liar. He really is Trump with a thesaurus. He doesn't actually believe in anything except for his own advancement. He doesn't care whether to do Brexit or not. But anyway, there is a certain logic to the Conservative case. Once Brexit's out of the way, then we can tackle with everything else. Brexit gets so much airtime, so much legislative time. So Labour have really shot themselves in the foot. If they'd allowed May's Brexit deal to take effect in March, early this year, Brexit would have been out of the way. They can move on to other issues. If there's an election now, Labour might even have won. But they've delayed it to January. Something about delaying it again. Labour's position is absolutely imbecilic on this issue. To renegotiate another deal with Strasbourg and Brussels, who might well tell them to go whistle because they're sick of it. But then, if Labour gets such a deal, hold another referendum in which Labour would campaign against the deal they've just negotiated, and try and persuade people to remain in the EU. So that would prolong, supposing Labour wins on Thursday, that would prolong the whole Brexit saga by 6 months at least. And people are fed up to the back teeth of it. My friends in business say, all this is just terrible. We just need to know what's happening because we can't be sure whether we're leaving or not. And so another one of the Conservative slogans is end the uncertainty. And they're trying to offer people strong and stable government, a bit like they did last time under Theresa May, not this palsied mess we've got at the moment, where the UK is almost paralytic because of Brexit. Do you either have a Conservative majority government or a Corbyn government? That's the choice. Or the coalition of chaos. Is very hard to see how Labour could win in any sense. But they'd have to have some sort of coalition to govern with Lib Dems, the SNP who'd want another referendum in order to break up the United Kingdom. One thing, if Brexit doesn't happen, then that really shoots at the SNP's fox. Scottish National Party, remember, they got their referendum, they campaigned for a century for this. 2014, should Scotland leave the United Kingdom or not? Obviously, 55% voted not, stay in the United Kingdom. But they say, oh, well, Brexit changes everything. A second bite of the cherry. And so London could say very firmly, no, you had it. That was it. We're told that's a decision for all time. But of course, that argument is rather undermined by the fact that London won't go ahead and actually implement Brexit. Everyone was told 3.5 years ago this Brexit referendum was a decision for eternity, all right? And it was going to be respected in perpetuity. Well, within days, David Lammy of Labour was saying, let's just disregard the result of the referendum. I know Parliament's not legally obliged to implement the outcome of the referendum, but the whole idea was to do what the people wanted, and it was not an opinion poll. So there we are. Anyway, Boris Johnson bravely went ahead in his debate against Corbyn, a challenge which Theresa May notably ducked. Was it foolhardy of Bojo? He may have calculated that the risk of not doing it was greater than the risk of actually doing it. Perhaps it would have been rash of Theresa May to do it because she couldn't hold her own against Corbyn. But this one against Corbyn, he gave as good as he got. The opinion polls narrowly show that Boris Johnson came out better in that one. He was ahead anyway, so someone would say no sense in jeopardising your lead because it's not going to hugely advantage you. But if it goes very badly wrong, you could lose the election in just a few minutes if you really boil balls up in that debate. So there's a Conservative Eve of Poll event I've been invited to on Wednesday evening, and I don't know where it is. I'll be told 12 hours before where to be so that Labour protesters can't go, in the presence of the First Lord of the Treasury, Boris Johnson. So the Liberal Democrats are there doing much better in the polls. They are up from 7% last time to about 16% now, so should gain a lot of seats. In Richmond upon Thames, let me give the proper name of the constituency, Richmond Park and Kingston North. It looks like Zach Goldsmith will be defeated because he won by only 45 votes last time. The Liberal Democrats have got this very effervescent and affable candidate named Sarah Olney, and let's face it, good looking. She may well take back the seat. It's a very Remain constituency, 60% Remain. It's even higher now in Richmond. The demographics favour the Lib Dems. So, because if the Lib Dems make any gain in votes, they'll win Richmond Park and Kingston North. So Zach Goldsmith, and I've met him, amiable chap though he is, decent and principled, I'm afraid he's going to lose. And of course he's been calumniated. Sarah Olney Force accused him of changing his mind and wanting a third runaway at Heathrow, which is absolutely not true. So he's a great constituency MP, but I don't think he's going to win. Okay, sorry for sounding a faint heart, but I'm just objectively assessing the data. I'm not one for wishful thinking. So the SNP is actually holding steady. Remember, they got 37 out of the 59 constituencies in Scotland, and they'll probably hold most of those. Conservatives probably lose about half the baker's dozen of seats we've got in North Britain. The Lib Dems gain a few, Labour gain a few. That's it. So what can I say? Yeah, the sort of the non-story of this election is the Brexit Party, which was going to contest something like 630 constituencies. Remember, the UK's got 650, 18 of which are in Northern Ireland, so about 630 in the rest. But now they stood down all their candidates in seats which the Conservatives hold. So they're just showing they're not taking this seriously. And there was a triple whammy. The other day, three Brexit members of the European Parliament defected to the Conservatives and endorsed Bojo's deal. Farage last month said how Bojo's deal was a complete betrayal of the promise of Brexit, but now he's changed his tune, and so Bojo is no longer a Judas in his view, so that's that. So they've contradicted themselves, and they just seem to be not taking this election seriously. Now, the Brexit Party was never going to win a seat, right? Even UKIP with 14% of the vote never won a seat in a general election, except that Clacton one, where what's his name, Douglas Carswell, the former Conservative MP, stood for the constituency he'd previously represented. So the Brexit Party's now down to 3% of the vote, and they're not going to be a significant factor. They could have cost the Conservatives a few seats here and there, but now they're just not going to. So people say that Jo Swinton, the Liberal Democrat leader, is underperforming. Yeah, I think she's not been brilliant. I don't think she's been dreadful either. But she's the youngest party leader at 39. She's the first woman to lead the Liberal Democrats. People don't have much against her. She could be more dynamic. She could be more alluring. Isn't really working against her. One thing Labour's using against her is when there was a coalition government, she was a junior minister, and she pushed through some of those welfare cuts. So that's that. Anyway, the whole thing is, how will it play out in terms of share of the vote and number of seats won? Because the ratio isn't very clear. If you get this many votes, you get this many seats. If you get this percentage of the vote, you get this percentage of the number of seats, something like that. Obviously, it's not a proportional system. So the Conservatives, I think, will end up with the majority, but quite a slight one, like 10, 20 at the most, even though they're 10% ahead. There's a certain level above which they can't go. What else would I say about this? I mean, Cameron, obviously, he won that election in, when was it, 2015. Only 4% of the head of the Labour Party, but won an all-right majority, rather more than that. But for various psephological reasons, I don't think the Conservatives are going to have a thumping great majority. It's not going to be the meltdown for Labour on the scale of 1983, like some were saying. So they obviously they need themselves a new leader, and Brexit will be fine out of the way, which will probably be a blessing for them. I'm afraid I just haven't got fired up about this election, and I don't think many people are feeling very zealous about it either, or what's the word, inspired. It's rather drab. It's the third election in 4 years. Another factor is the first winter election the UK will have held since October 1974. That will presumably depress turnout, which is thought to favour the Conservatives more than Labour. Another thing is, opinion polls have traditionally underrated the Conservatives, because if you're a Conservative, you're told you're racist, you're fascist, you're a bigot, you're a cruel, selfish, capitalist, Tory, scum, and all the rest of it. So that's why the Conservatives usually do a bit better than the polls predict. Not last time, and maybe not again. A bit like people are going to vote Leave. That was underestimated by the polls. Some people just couldn't be reached, had no mobile phone, refused to answer. A few people are embarrassed to say it because they get verbal abuse from others. They got denounced in the purplest of prose. So will the Conservatives do a bit better than the polls say? Well, possibly, in which case I might have to eat my words. Even a small shift, even a 1 percentage point gain for the Conservatives could result in dozens of seats, because these things are sometimes won by a wafer-thin margin. There are plenty of seats that Labour is just not going to lose in Northern England. I know you could have said that about Scotland until 2015. But the Labour Party's come back in Scotland, but Corbyn doesn't play as well in Caledonia as I might have thought, where really the fulcrum of politics is further left than in Wales, England, or indeed Northern Ireland. Okay, so that's that. The election will soon be out of the way. For me, I used to be like that Professor Anthony King, thinking that an election for me is like a World Cup for some other people. It's so exciting. The Tories published the manifesto quite late, and it's very brief, so I suppose it couldn't be scrutinised too much, and only political anoraks read these things anyway. I didn't read it, actually. So there we are. Huge spending pledges by both of them, going to spend like sailors, Labour and the Conservative Party. So the duopoly of both being quite irresponsible, because the NHS is in a very bad shape. 50,000 nurses have a profession in the last 10 years, not retired, not been struck off, not died, chosen to leave because the situation is so dreadful. And so in public service, the Conservatives are simply not doing enough. So that's that. Well, we shall see what happens on Thursday. So Bojo, well, virtually certainly staying as Prime Minister. But the thing is, will Brexit still happen? I still think not. Because almost everyone's not a Conservative is against Bojo's deal. The DUP are against it because they think it weakens Northern Ireland's position. SNP, Liberal Democrats, and 9 out of 10 Labour MPs are against it. The Conservatives, remember, there are a few Remainer Conservatives who would still vote against this, which is why it could still be blocked, and they could still revoke Article 50, or delay it and have another referendum, ask for another extension. Of course, the chance the EU might say no, but that's that. So Brexit's actually still not in the bag.